Luigi. How you feeling?
Count 1 and 2, first and second degree murder related to terrorism, were just dropped in the case involving Luigi Mangione. I was just inside the courtroom. His demeanor, he seemed very calm when he walked in there. He was only in the courtroom for about 20 minutes or so. As far as the death penalty is concerned, he is still possibly facing that because that has to do with the federal case, not the state case, which is what we heard here today. There was a heavy police presence in there. I counted at least 4 court officers and 5 police officers. There were a number of supporters for Luigi Mangione inside that courtroom. The court officers made it very clear in the beginning that they wanted the hearing to be quiet. They wanted decorum to be maintained. But even as I'm speaking, you can see this is another truck in support of Luigi Mangione that we've seen, where people are praising him for what he did, which is what makes this case so controversial.
A couple of charges were dropped. Those terrorism-related charges to the alleged murder of that UnitedHealthcare CEO that everyone's been talking about since earlier this year. But Mangione walked in the courtroom, waltzed through. People were talking to him as he was in handcuffs. And of course, more pictures popped up of people wondering, what is this going through Luigi's mind? Is this a new cover of Vogue? There was actual analysis that broke down things from this.
Luigi Mangione came and went from a quick hearing here at court, and the judge from the bench issued a ruling dismissing charges of murder as a crime of terrorism. Judge Gregory Caro said, Diane, that the prosecutors presented sufficient evidence that the defendant murdered UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson in a premeditated and calculated execution. But the judge said that does not mean the defendant did so with terroristic intent. So Luigi Mangione is still going to face second-degree murder charges that could get him life in prison, but the judge did not find that there was an enhancement of terrorism that was warranted here because he said the evidence just didn't support it. Prosecutors with the Manhattan DA's office believe that Mangione's writings that were allegedly found in a notebook he was carrying in a backpack after his arrest in Altoona, Pennsylvania, pointed to the idea that Mangione wanted to influence others. So they believed this terrorism enhancement was satisfied, but the judge disagreed.
There's more analysis as to why those writings weren't, accepted by the judge as being something theirs. But I just want to think about this for a second. They want to make this a terrorism charge, maybe because they saw the way many people reacted to what it is that went down, and then many folks' celebration of it, their support of him. They're turning him into this, model figure where everyone thinks he's hot. All of the response from society, the point now is to make sure that that response is not something that a collective group of people in society could experience and connect it to and saw the results of what is that happened. And some people celebrated because they were like, I'm just as mad as anyone would be that might do something like this. So instead, they want to make it a terrorism charge rather than hey, maybe we should think about the way we're affecting our society charge. Here's what the judge was thinking. Here's more from CBS.
Why aren't those writings enough to show that this was more than just about killing Brian Thompson, but it was also about spreading a larger message and scaring other people?
So as someone who's practiced in New York for over a decade now and has actually litigated against this statute of terrorism, I think it does make sense. And this is why, and I'll break it down this way. There are 3 different ways in which you can affect terrorism, 2 of which apply to the government, either influencing a policy of the government by intimidation or affecting the conduct of a unit of government by murder. That doesn't apply here. What both the defense and prosecution were focusing on, the one aspect of to intimidate or coerce a civilian population. And while the writings are a part of this case, I think if Luigi Mangione had publicized those writings and told the civilian population to try to coerce him, says, I'm going to do this for this reason because I want UnitedHealthcare to do X, Y, and Z, I think that would have been terrorism. The way that the government argued this in saying that, well, because there was a murder of an individual that has a certain policy based on his employment, it's clear that the individual, being Luigi Mangione, was trying to influence the population. And the judge made the analogy and said, no, murders throughout the city, throughout the country, that can terrorize people. It can make them frightened. But it doesn't mean that the person who's committing that murder is trying to influence them for that basis. And there was not that information in the grand jury. So I think the judge's ruling makes sense here.
This isn't the end of it, obviously. I think we heard it from the original report. This isn't the back end of it. It's not like charges are dropped and now Luigi Mangione is getting out for Thanksgiving. No. This is just the enhancement part that I think leads to even more lethal charges. That then brings us to this last piece here. Because don't forget, there's state charges because it was in New York, and there's also federal charges because this was a bigger case. A lot of people were hearing about it. It enveloped the community, the entire country.
And I know this differs state by state. So saying he is still charged with second-degree murder doesn't mean that they don't think this was premeditated.
Oh, this is absolutely premeditated from the eyes of the judge in terms of this ruling. Second-degree murder is when you have a premeditated murder of an individual. As Aaron Katersky pointed out, he's facing up to life in prison, 15 years to life in fact. But in terms of his intent was to kill the CEO of UnitedHealthcare, at least based on the grand jury results and the findings of the court. It was not to influence or coerce the civilian population for some sort of policy change. That's what the judge is making a distinction here.
Brian, his lawyers were hoping the judge would go farther here and also dismiss state charges based on double jeopardy because he also has a federal child. The judge didn't go for that and also didn't set a trial date at this hearing. So what happens next?
Well, what's next is Luigi Mangione is going to be back in court on December 1st. The judge still has a couple of other rulings to make, including setting a trial date, but also to decide a defense motion as to whether prosecutors violated Mangione's HIPAA rights when they accessed some of his medical records through a subpoena. The judge said he was not ruling on the legality of the subpoena, but he told prosecutors they couldn't use any evidence collected from his insurance company, Aetna. Mangione is also due back in court in December. Across the way in federal court, that's where he's facing the possibility of the death penalty if he's convicted of federal charges. And I think the defense is going to try and argue that the federal case should go first because it has the more serious potential outcome. They'd like to focus there. But I don't think this judge or the prosecutors with the Manhattan DA's office are going to give up so easily on trying him in state court for a murder that occurred on the streets of Manhattan.
What I take from that more is between the federal and the state prosecutors and defense teams that wanting to have their trial go first, probably just for the attention of it. You want that one to go first. That's the first verdict that we get, whether or not it's for the death penalty versus 15 to 20 years in prison, as they were talking about for state charges. I don't know. Something they can really hang their hat on. It's a high profile case. So let ours go first. Please let ours go first. I want the attention on it. Rather than, again, us addressing our society. I get the disdain and the indictments for people that are upset about what is that happened here because, murder charges happening here. But if we cared about society and if we cared about why these things happen, since they're scouring through why these things happened, and we just want to go straight to terrorism charges, why don't we go through why would someone, if they did uphold those terrorism charges attached to this, why someone like that with that kind of an objective would carry so much weight with so many people who aren't charged with murder? Why did so many people look up and go, man, that's right, and start celebrating? So many normal people that you wouldn't have heard anything from were like, this makes sense. I can't believe these types of things always happen to so many members of our society. And if our, leadership, people that were supposed to represent us, cared enough, they would probably change some of the processes that go through allowing so many people to die. I just feel like this should be an opportunity for us to put a flashlight on our society, and not because we should just demonize our society, because it's weird how we don't demonize our society when, they say stuff like, let's have a race war, and white men stand up, fight back when there's nobody to fight back against, those things. But we put a whole bunch of criticism on our society when it's something like this. If we're going to analyze it, let's see why the society thinks this way.